At Trinity Health System, we have a profound respect and awe for all creation. We are motivated by the words of Christ to be his hands and heart to those in need. Our doctors, nurses, and staff are driven by selfless performance, combining our expertise with the technology to bridge the gap to healthier communities. Healthcare isn't just about healing, it's about human dignity. Trinity Health System, inspired by faith, serving you with distinction.
Welcome to the 2016 version of the Star Sportscast, sponsored by Trinity and brought to you by the Herald-Star and Weirton Daily Times. My name's Matthew Peasley. I'm a sports writer for the newspapers, here to bring you some quick information on Week 4 of the high school football season. Before I get into the games, just a friendly reminder that there's still a lot of high school football action to be played this fall season, and you can pick up a pocket schedule sponsored by Trinity at plenty of local merchants around the tri-state area to stay up to date on what games are happening where. Also, while you're out, pick up a copy of The Gridiron. Now, this was available in the newspapers back at the end of August, but you can still buy it on individual newsstands. It, too, is packed with great information, including team rosters and highlights from this upcoming season. Now, today is September 15th, which means the Football Extra is available in the afternoon editions of the newspaper, highlighting all of the upcoming games for this weekend. We do have a game tonight, Thursday. It's a rivalry game between two Hancock, West Virginia schools, Weirton, Madonna, and Glen. Both teams are looking for their first win of the season, and it'll be homecoming night at Jimmy Carey Stadium for the Weirton Madonna Blue Dawns. Both teams obviously came off of losses last week. Glen lost at home 56-0 to Indian Creek. They had a couple players, a couple key starters out for that game, but they will be back this week, hopefully to revamp their offense. They'll be looking to get on the board and hopefully just put up their run game to score early and often against Madonna. But Madonna's looking to come back too. They lost last week, put up a good fight at Wheeling Central. They lost 47-28. Caleb Smith had 2 rushing touchdowns, also ran for 75 yards, so he is going to try to jumpstart their own offense at home. They lost in Week 1, a heartbreaker, to Bishop Donahue, 29-27, and have had, unfortunately, 2 big losses since then. But this will be a good game. Obviously, one team's got to come out with the win, and no better way for Madonna to do it on homecoming, and no better way for the Golden Bears to ruin the night up there on Thursday night. But good game will be happening. It'll be the only game in town, so we expect a lot of people at Jimmy Carey Stadium tonight. Turning it over to Friday night's action, we start with Big Red at Boardman. This is the first road game for Steubenville all season, one of 2 road games. Coincidentally enough, both are in the Youngstown area. They got Boardman on Friday and then Youngstown-Ursuline in a couple weeks. Big Red is coming off a really big win over West Holmes, 41-7 at Harding Stadium last week. Big Red scored on their first 5 possessions of the game, so they got an early lead and were able to cruise from there. The 2-quarterback system has worked really well for them so far on the young season. Javon Davis and Agresta have combined for a lot of yards last week. They both were efficient, completed 4 passes each, and combined for over 150 yards passing. Then they got Jalen McGee back after he was roughed up in Week 1, but he runs the ball nice for Steubenville, so they definitely have a dynamic attack on offense, and their defense is a traditional Big Red defense, and they can stack up against almost anybody. Boardman is coming off a loss. They lost 21-14 to Massillon Jackson last week, so they come into this game 2-1. In Week 2, they beat Mooney, a big win for that program. They won 28-26 at YSU's Stambaugh Stadium. And then in Week 1, they beat Youngstown East 41-0. Just like Big Red, Boardman's got a big roster, a lot of depth. They're big up front. This is definitely going to be a tough challenge for Steubenville, but I predict a really close game with Steubenville coming out on top in the end. But this will be really exciting, and I know a lot of people from Jefferson County will be making the quick drive up to Boardman. Maybe you could stop at Southern Park Mall and get a nice dinner on 224 before the game. But it'll be a great atmosphere for high school football. Really, that's probably the biggest game in Northeast Ohio that night. So it'll be a big crowd at the Boardman's beautiful new stadium where Big Red played last year in the playoffs when they beat Ursuline on their road to Columbus. So big game up in Boardman. Another one, big game down here in Jefferson County. Catholic Central heads to Toronto. The Red Knights are 3-0 after beating Sebring last week, 43-22. Catholic Central still searching for their first win of the season. They're 0-3 after losing 20-0 against Western Reserve last week. That game was a little bit closer than what the score would suggest, though. Obviously, Catholic Central doesn't get on the board, but their defense played well enough to win that game. They held Western Reserve to under 200 yards total, only 73 rushing and 73 passing for Western Reserve. Meanwhile, Catholic Central is a little banged up. Some of their starters on offense are a little dinged up, so they had trouble moving the ball last week. Hayden Daly led the team with 57 rushing yards last week, and they fumbled twice, which really killed any momentum they might have had. So if they want to hang in with Toronto this week and maybe go up to Clark Hinkle Stadium and pull off a win, they're going to have to take care of the football. Toronto's defense is playing well. Their offense hasn't missed a beat from last year's playoff team. Nate Carafa stepped in a quarterback this year. Last week against Sebring, he was 7 for 11 passing for 100 yards and just as equally effective on the ground, running 8 times for 74 yards and a touchdown. And they have a really wealth of running backs behind him, including Max Tice, Jake Keenan, and Thomas Fordham and Danny Zadinek, who have potential to put up 100-yard games every time out. Max Tice led the rushing attack last week, going 99 yards and a touchdown. He was banged up in week 1 when I saw them at Wellsville. He missed the second half, but he's been able to come back and not miss a beat. So this will be a good game between two old rivals. I believe this is their 44th time meeting each other. So it'll be a packed house up in Toronto, and expect supporters of both teams to come out and be loud. Another game we got. First, we'll take you back to the West Virginia side, where Brooke is looking for its first win, and the schedule does not get any easier for the AAA Brooke Bruins as they go to Hurricane, who is 3-0. Last week, Hurricane beat a powerful Cabell Midland team 34-31, while Brooke lost to Morgantown University on the road down in Morgantown 39-13. Brooks kind of had to adjust their offense using some new quarterbacks because Cody Hudson looks to be out likely for the rest of the season. So they used 2 underclassmen in Gage Yost and Logan Williams last week, who looked pretty good under center. Logan Williams was 9 for 17 passing for 95 yards, and Gage Yost was 7 for 11 for 77 yards. So as they start to develop their offense, those two guys will be probably splitting time at quarterback and trying to throw the ball to get something going on offense. Running back-wise, they have Alex Edgel and Anthony Pennant, who combined to go over 50 yards last week at University. So they look to be running the ball a little bit more, too, down at Hurricane. We got a home game now back at Jimmy Carey Stadium, so it'll be a busy weekend for Madonna on Thursday, and then Weir on Friday night. Weir 3-0 hosts Kaiser from the Eastern Panhandle. Weir's coming off a 15-6 win at John Marshall, while Kaiser lost to Fort Hill out of Cumberland, Maryland, 41-0. However, Coach Tony Filberto says that Fort Hill just happens to be the 5th best team in the state of Maryland. So Kaiser's definitely battle-tested coming into this one, looking to get on the board against Weir, but that won't be easy. Because Weir High's only allowed 2 touchdowns all year. We gave up 6 points to John Marshall last week and just allowed a late second-half touchdown to Edison the week before that. Actually, the defense has been so strong that when they got on the board down against John Marshall, Michael Mills had a fumble recovery for the touchdown to get them on the board first and spark them for the rest of the game. But their offense has got to be one of the strongest in Class AA, West Virginia, and really in the Ohio Valley, led by Cody Henrietti, who rushed for almost 150 yards last week. He is second in the Herald-Star Daily Times coverage area in terms of rushing yards, and they're going to feed him the ball a lot against Kaiser. I'm guessing he goes over 125 at least this weekend. And as a nice compliment, quarterback Donovan Spencer has been throwing the ball pretty well, but he's quick on his feet, and he proved last year that he's one of, if not the fastest guys in West Virginia. He added 30 yards on the ground last week and a rushing touchdown. Another home game, we got Edison hosting Beaver Local, two Buckeye 8 rivals going at it. Edison is coming off of its second win of the year, so they're now 2-1 after beating Buckeye Local last week, 36-12. They ran the ball really well last week, had over 400 yards rushing. Seth Cade and Joey Nave both went over 100 rushing yards, and River Pappas added 80 yards rushing. So it's big that those guys continue that production because they're going to be without Dakota Clifton for a while, who got hurt in that Weir game. But they got back to what they do best after not getting much on the ground against Weir. They were able to run the ball with authority down at Buckeye Local last week. Beaver Local lost to Lindsley last week. The week before that, they lost big to West Branch. But they got their first win in week 1, beating Akron North pretty good. So after 2 straight losses, they're going to be looking to get back on the winning ways. So I think that's going to be a good game out in Richmond. But back to Buckeye Local again. They're hosting Indian Creek this week down in southern Jefferson County. Indian Creek is 2-1, while Buckeye Local is 0-3. But head coach John Holman brought up a good point. They are 0-3, but they've looked better in each of the 3 games they've played. They gave up 71 points in their first game, gave up 47 points in their second game, and then gave up 36 points last week to Edison. So that's coming down. But the defense is going to have its hands full with Indian Creek this week, who put up 56 points at Glen. It's the Indian Creek offense is quick, fast. They like to run the ball, and quarterback Greg Wade can throw the ball, and he's got some legs on him too. And Robert Coppa, Trey Harton are solid runners for the Redskins, who put up about 300 yards rushing last week in the big win at Glen. Looking at Buckeye Local again, the defense has gotten better, and quarterback Jared Moore is really looking good here in his senior year. He's thrown for 279 yards, which is second in the Herald-Star Daily Times coverage area in terms of passing yards. So if he is able to slip a few past the Redskins, they could definitely compete in this one. And our last game to talk about is another Friday night tilt as Harrison Central heads to Union Local. Harrison Central is 2-1, and Union Local is 3-0. Last week, Harrison Central dropped a heartbreaker to Bel Air, 35-34. And Tyler West, their sophomore running back, continues to be one of the strongest rushers in our area, leads the area in rushing. And last week, Harrison was held to 88 yards rushing in the first half, and Tyler West was able to explode for over 200 yards in the second half alone, and he finished with 235 total in that one. But they lost on a last-second field goal to Bel Air on a really hot Saturday night, so I'm guessing that Coach Justin Kropka and his Huskies are going to be looking forward to playing under the lights, where it should be a little bit cooler and more comfortable this Friday night. But Union Local happens to be one of the hottest teams in the OVAC, coming in at 3-0. They won't be an easy test playing at home. But if Harrison wants to get their season back on track, which I think they have definitely the potential to do so, they're going to have to do it this week in big fashion on the ground, and hopefully they can ground the Jets in the process. So that's a look at our games this weekend. Big packed action here in Week 4. And by the way, if you're at a game either tonight, Thursday, or Friday night, look on the sidelines. If one of the Herald-Star Daily Times photographers or reporters is there, we got these little footballs to pass out. So we'll probably pass them out to the cheerleaders, and they'll get the crowd pumped up, because pretty cool little mementos to celebrate football being back. By the way, if you can look on here, it says to follow our Twitter account, HSDT Sports. packs all of the local sports action, not just football. We discuss cross-country, volleyball, soccer. We have all the scores on our Twitter account with some cool pictures and videos as well. So be sure to catch a football and follow us on Twitter and read us in the print edition for all your high school sports needs. See you next week. That's good.